Hey, so it's New Year's Day, and as you can tell, it's shaping up to be, already is, looking to be a beautiful day. The plan is to hit a session, quick training session, and then potentially meet up with some of the guys from the academy to do some rolls.
That was a slave.
And then after that, probably just kick back for the rest of the day. I might catch up on some material from the recent, the recent course I joined, which is called the Card Institute. Today we're going to train in here. I don't know if you can see. Not really. Maybe if I zoom out, not really still. Yeah, we're going to train in there. And yeah, might get some footage. Hey, so I ended up going through some of the material from the course that I'm recently doing, or involved in, and some of the material recently covered was on the topic of flexible dieting. Now, I've spoken about flexible dieting before, not on this platform, so I thought this would be a good opportunity to give a brief introduction to what I've come to know flexible dieting is, as well as some further insight that I've come to know and learn more about from doing some of the material from the course. So, without going into too much depth, And in my educated opinion, whatever that means, flexible dieting is more to do with the attitude and approach an individual has towards eating. An important thing to note is that it is not the same as if it fits your macros, whereby an individual is solely focused on hitting certain macronutrient targets, whilst the amount of attention paid towards the quality of intake is less of a priority. Second, what one individual may consider as a flexible approach may be vastly different to what another individual may consider to be flexible. So, essentially, what flexible dieting entails is the manipulation of the following three characteristics, that being consistency, accuracy, and flexibility. Conventional thinking led a lot of individuals, including myself, that such characteristics functions like a switch. Whether or not we were on a meal plan dictated whether the individual was good or bad. Other examples include, all carbohydrates are evil. If I'm not perfect, then I'm a failure. If I eat such and such, then I am bad, indicating that there is no room for flexibility. This does not mean having any regularity in meals is useful, but what is important to note is that there is a difference between purposefully restricting variety in order to improve adherence and increase satiety versus restricting certain foods because we've omitted them as good or evil. In respect to the manipulation of these three characteristics, where each characteristic is dialed up to will be determined by a few factors, namely the goal of the individual and also the individual's current health status. Different circumstances will require different levels of accuracy, consistency, and therefore potentially allow for greater room of flexibility, or less. An individual whom has an upcoming bodybuilding show or combat sports event, for instance, is going to require more accuracy compared to someone who wants to lean out for the warmer weather or just lose a few kilograms, and therefore may also have less margin for flexibility. Similarly, individuals who have some form of compromised health condition, such as insulin resistance or newly diagnosed IBS or some sort of autoimmune condition, may require more accuracy compared to individuals in a less compromised state. Okay, so now that we're more aware that flexibility refers to the attitude or approach to eating, we can examine the tiers or level of tracking that exists. As mentioned before, rather than being on or off, let us think of each level of tracking existing on a continuum. Each method used for tracking nutritional intake comes with its trade-offs. The tiers or type of tracking methods is also something that is unique and can be reflective of the skill level and goals for the individual. According to the course I'm involved in, there are 4 tiers. The first being tracking energy intake. Energy balance is an essential aspect of any eating regime. Although the energy balance model is simple, i.e. being energy in versus energy out, viewing it this way without considering the cascade of effects energy intake can have on our physiology undermines its importance. Such a topic could be something discussed as part of an entire video and is way beyond the scope of what this segment is about. Second is tracking macronutrients and energy intake. So macronutrients have an important aspect when it comes to things related to body composition, but also serve as key factors for other functions within our body. For instance, proteins are broken down for neurotransmitters, and fat is used for the synthesis of hormones. So third is energy, macronutrients with the addition of some guidelines. This is where we could recommend certain food types we would like the individual to include, such as animal source proteins, plant sources of protein, recommending certain supplements, the inclusion of certain fruits, and consider even the timing of certain macronutrients. Lastly is macronutrients guidelines with some actual meal structure, such as providing real-time structure. For example, ensuring protein is consumed early in the morning and even the food source that protein is coming from. We could also be specific with the consumption of more than 50% of carbohydrate intake being post-workout in order to utilize increased tolerance to carbohydrates. Even consuming apple cider vinegar prior to an evening meal to regulate post-meal blood glucose levels. I suspect the real difference between this tier and the previous one is actual structure is adhered to versus some guidelines that can be followed, but with less specificity. For instance, consuming protein versus being specific where the protein source is coming from and when it is consumed. Okay, so to sum up, essentially each tier or level of tracking has its unique trade-offs. Tracking nutrients for a long period of time via counting macronutrients may reduce one's ability to intuitively eat and their interoceptive skills. Interoception is becoming a bit more prevalent in the literature recently in respect to its association with long-term dietary intake and its associated behaviors. It refers, I guess, to the process of understanding and being aware of internal bodily signals, which may be a modifiable determinant or factor for long-term dietary intake, appetite regulation, and therefore weight gain. I suspect there can be one more level or tier added to the list that was previously shown on the previous slide, and that's intuitive eating, which could be a discussion for another video. Lastly, something else important to note is the implications around invoking in certain dietary behaviors, or let's say involving yourself in certain dietary regimes, and the development of long-term unwanted eating behaviors. Perhaps something also to discuss in another video. So in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed the content in this video. If you found it useful or you'd like to learn about anything else or see anything else, let me know, and I'll catch you in the next one.